Nobody believes that inflation is running at what the government says it's running at. That's absurd. Nobody believes it anymore. I mean, for years they were able to mask it because labor was outsourced to China. So we didn't see it show up in labor costs. But when you have like Paul Krugman at the New York Times say that inflation's good for the lower classes and the working class, but then at the same time, you see a report that categorically, patently states that the inflation has reduced purchasing power to levels that are make any wage gains insignificant, if not negative. You know, you have to ask yourself, who is Paul Krugman working for? Who is the New York Times working for? It's not for Americans. What foreign government is directing Paul Krugman at this point? He's saying things that are patently false and misleading. So I have to really question that. So, I mean, it's no secret that inflation is running, 15%. If you look at loss of purchasing power, you're talking 15%. It's really galloping out of control.
Bitcoin fixes that though. How?
Because it's finite supply and it's got infinite demand and it's a safe harbor. And that's where people are going to protect themselves against fiat money. You can't print Bitcoin. You can print fiat money. Gold supply is not fixed either. So it's the go-to commodity. That's why Paul Tudor Jones calls it the fastest horse in the race. Paul Tudor Jones is one of the first people to come out and say, maybe 2.5 years ago, that inflation was going to be a problem. And this is when policymakers were saying that they were warning against deflation. He was saying, no, it's actually inflation. It's going to become a problem. That's why I'm buying inflation-sensitive assets. And Bitcoin is the fastest horse in the race. And he put 1% of his portfolio into Bitcoin. I believe he's raised that allocation to 5%. Then Michael Saylor, of course, came out and said, hey, the monetary energy of the US dollar is depreciating by 15% a year. That's the true inflation number. Your purchasing power is being destroyed by 15% a year. We're buying Bitcoin as our play against inflation. And I must say, heroically, Michael Saylor could have borrowed money from the Fed and bought back their own stock, and he could have made a lot of money doing what Microsoft and Google and Amazon and all those corporations do. They buy back their own stock, which, by the way, was illegal not too long ago, with that ultra low interest rate from the Fed. You see, when the Fed says there's not much inflation, therefore they're going to keep interest rates low, they're doing that so that insiders can borrow at those ultra cheap rates, buy their own stock. Their executive stock options double, triple, quadruple. They cash out and they make a lot of money. But us who are not in on that game, if we go on our credit card, it's still 18%, Daniela. How come my credit card interest rate is still 17, 18% during the last 5 to 10 years when rates have come down substantially? How come my Visa, MasterCard is not at 5 or 6%, right? Because it's what I call interest rate apartheid. If you're not a friend of Goldman Sachs, you live in a Bantustan, you live in a ghetto of high interest rates, and you're squeezed, and you never get to save any money. But if you're a friend of Goldman Sachs, you get to borrow at 0%, invest in assets, and you collectively are buying the same assets. Those go up in price. Then you can use those as collateral to borrow more money and just repeat this over and over again. That's why the wealth and income gap, the wealth gap is so high in America. It's higher now than even during the robber baron era because of this interest rate apartheid engineered by the Fed, condoned by Nancy Pelosi. And this is why Bitcoin is going to, $220,000 in the short term, and going a lot higher as interest rates and the dollar create this insurmountable obstacle for anyone trying to save money who's not in Bitcoin. Bitcoin has always been decoupled. It's on its own vector. It's not correlated to anything. So it started off at essentially zero, and it's heading to be essentially Bitcoin. You have to understand Bitcoin is a 51% attack on the global energy. So 51% of all global energy will be dedicated to Bitcoin, and this will starve to death all fiat money, shitcoins, and gold. And the price is essentially going to infinity because in dollar terms, because the dollar is going to zero. So it's on its own vector. It's not correlated to anything. Occasionally, in any 6-month period, you could look at a chart and say, oh, why is this correlated or not correlated? But over 10 years, 11 years, it's not correlated to anything. It breaks all the rules. Again, as Michael Saylor has said, it smashes all the rules. Unlike gold, you have with Bitcoin an impenetrable wall of encryption that protects the underlying protocol, and the demand ultimately is infinite. So Bitcoin has infinite demand. Gold does not. And gold also is being replaced by Bitcoin. So gold is being demonetized the same way silver has been demonetized. So in the short term, you have derivatives traders and derivatives markets, and you do have a lot of the games that we see in various markets will have an impact on the short term on price. But if you look at the long-term chart, look at the 10-year chart, you see a very orderly, ascent higher, and that will continue really for during the course of everyone who's watching this, during their lifetime. That will be the course of the price. It will just continue to go up over your lifetime, my lifetime, and everyone who's watching this over their lifetime. The Chinese CBDC is meaningless. It's just another centralized digital offering. It's not different than what they have currently. It's just more centralization. Bitcoin is decentralized. It's the only purely decentralized money ever in the history of the world. And the Chinese centralized digital coin, it is no competition. It doesn't mean anything. Someday China will capitulate and start buying Bitcoin. They're going to pay a lot more for it. They made a similar mistake 500 years ago during the Ming Dynasty when they burnt down their treasure fleet. China was on the verge of conquering the world. Then some bureaucrat got in office, decided that the merchants were too powerful, and they burnt down all their ships. Similarly, last year, China got rid of all their miners. It's probably the worst catastrophe economically for China since they burnt their treasure fleet 500 years ago. It's really, really stupid. They're going to pay the price dearly when they have to come back into the market and start accumulating Bitcoin at $1 million or $2 million a coin.
Silver squeeze earlier in the 2010s, he was a big name behind it. Curious to get his thoughts on the progress made by Wall Street Silver Reddit movement.
Right. So at that time, if you recall, after the financial crisis of 2008, Bear Stearns was acquired by JP Morgan, and they inherited this unbelievably large silver short position. So at that time, if we got the price of silver up to, I forget the exact number, but I think it was maybe 150 or something an ounce, then we could have bankrupted JP Morgan and put them out of business. So we got the price from 15 to 50. That was thanks to the Crash JP Morgan Buy Silver campaign that we created back at that time. Then, of course, they increased the margin requirements, and the feds came in to bail out JP Morgan once again. And we saw the price now dip back to where it was. But that unique situation doesn't exist anymore. So it's no longer a viable play, in my opinion. I think the best movement is just buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a way to defund Wall Street, defund central banks, defund fiat money, defund shitcoins, defund gold. Just buy Bitcoin. Remember during our lifetime, Daniela, we had something called the Greenspan put, which started in the 1980s. And every time the markets came down, the Fed would come in to bail everybody out. That was called the Greenspan put, became the Bernanke put, the Janet Yellen put. Now we have the J. Powell put. They simply won't let markets function with true price discovery. They're constantly bailing people out. We live now in an era called the Bitcoin call. It's like just buy Bitcoin and watch everything else around you burn to the ground, and you'll be fine.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
Do you want to know one thing about crypto? I made over 3,000% in profit in a few weeks. Fact is, the traditional financial system, the traditional money system makes you poor, not rich. If you want to earn $500,000, $1 million, you have to wait until you're 50, 60, 70 in the traditional financial system, and you probably will still be broke. And you will be old. This is not a sexy combination, as you can imagine. But the question is, how can you start in crypto and make these profits? Where to invest? Where to start? My name is Gunnar and I'm from Germany, as you can hear, and things are a little bit different in Germany. More about that later on. Fact is, there are lots of different cryptocurrencies. It's a gigantic universe where beginners and professionals get easily lost. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are 7 key steps you need to follow to become successful in this market. You have to know them, and if you fail one of them, it's literally impossible to succeed in this market. Just an example, one of the key points is your exchange, and one of the biggest are, for example, Binance and Coinbase. These are trusted and well-established exchanges, but, and this is a big but, you won't find the super profitable coins on those exchanges. The unknown super profitable coins that get gigantic profits are not traded on those kind of exchanges. They are traded on much smaller insider platforms that are barely known. And I can tell you what those super secret exchanges are and why they are so profitable. And another super important thing are the right information sources. The point is, the internet is gigantic. There are hundreds and hundreds of YouTube channels, blogs, pages, and much more. And there are also market makers and influencers. For example, Elon Musk, he is not a crypto guy, but the moment he recommended Dogecoin, it went through the roof, to the moon, so to say. But why did he recommend it? Where did he hear it from? He didn't hear it from newspapers. And believe me, he is listening to someone. But you have to know who, and you have to react before he is reacting. This is really important. And these are only 2 of the 7 steps you have to follow in order to be successful in crypto. And if you want to know all of these steps in much more detail, and if you want to have a comprehensive checklist, here's what you should do. There is a link below this video. Click on this link and you will get the opportunity to subscribe to my channel. Click on the link and you will see a video where I explain the next steps. So see you soon. Click on the link now. I'll see you there.